All right, guys, it is about 2 a.m. in the morning right now. I just finished watching the Joe Rogan Donald Trump podcast that everybody was waiting for months and months to happen, and it finally happened. And I'm just going to give you the broad strokes, the quick rundown of it, because this thing went 3 hours, man. I am not kidding you. It was a 3-hour podcast. There were no teleprompters. There were no edits. It was just a straight conversation. Okay. And this is what candidates need to do, right? And this is what's, so disappointing about the other side, meaning, Kamala, is she doesn't do these type of long form, interviews where, she's getting faced with questions and it's not being edited down or diluted or anything like that. But she was also invited to go on the podcast, and she declined. She said, scheduling conflicts, I can't make it, I'm busy. Give me a break, man. Give me a break. And this would help her, which is crazy. I mean, this would really help her, like, reach the audience that she's trying to reach, which are men, right? That basically the audience she has ignored the entire time until she realized, like, oh, hey, man, we could lose this thing because we don't have enough male votes. We got to get more men on our side. So she sends out Obama and Tim Walz and all these other people out of the woodwork to try to get men to vote for her. And and their whole shtick is to shame men into voting for her, telling them that it's probably because you're misogynistic and you don't want to see a woman president, never even addressing the actual issues that are hurting men, right? Which is the economy, illegal immigration, the cost of eggs, and living expenses, housing prices. No, that has nothing to do with it. The reason why you don't want her to be president is because she's a woman of color and she's female and you're misogynistic. All right. Anyway, as for Joe Rogan's podcast, it was amazing. I really implore you guys to watch it. But again, man, this thing was 3 hours long, and it's a bit grueling, but fascinating interview. They talked about everything from obviously the presidency, what it's like to be president, to the 2020 election. Do you really think that they stole it from you? And then he goes on to explain why he feels that it was, right? And also they talked about Kamala and the fact that she did not want to go on his podcast. They talk about, just every topic you can think of. And the thing I liked about it, he's not sitting there repeating himself. I was just watching Kamala's town hall. When was it? Earlier yesterday and today. And I'm just blown away by the fact that she constantly repeats herself, right? She constantly, if I hear I grew up in a middle-class background, one more time, I'm going to go nuts. If I hear her brag about the fact that I was a prosecutor, I prosecuted trans international, felons, and stop. It's the same shtick over and over. So this was pretty refreshing to hear them just talk and have a conversation. And when you listen to these two candidates, the way he articulates himself, the way he speaks and just answers questions directly is refreshing, right? As opposed to the other side in trying to give her a chance as well to address concerns that most people in living in this country have, that her administration did, right? She doesn't answer these questions directly. So it was refreshing to hear Trump on the Rogan podcast talk about these things. And again, they talked about everything. So I really encourage you guys to watch it. But again, if you could get through the 3 hours like I did, kudos to you, especially tonight, earlier tonight, since it was the World Series. Dodgers took down the Yankees, game 1, 6-3. Well, obviously wearing my Dodgers gear and whatnot, but
And a home run the first time at
that was a great game, right? Great game. Not if you're a Yankees fan, though. I do like the Yankees, though, but it's, hey, man, I live in LA. I'm on board with my Dodgers, man. But regardless, I was, you know, it was hard to focus on the World Series waiting for this podcast to drop, right? Because I knew it was going to be good. Um, and like I said, I mean, this thing is getting so many hits, so many views, so many comments. I mean, it's crazy. I had like 500, 600,000 likes already at the time before I hopped on this. I just rechecked it again. It had probably about 30,000 plus comments. It's insane. It's blowing up. It's breaking the internet, right? And I think right now, I mean, it's the middle of night, and they're starting to release like short clips, short segments from the full 3-hour podcast. So it'll be a little easier to digest for you guys. And yeah, I really believe this is going to help him a lot. I just, I mean, I don't know. Whoever you want to win this election, I mean, you know, it really just comes down to getting out there and voting, right? But yeah, the podcast is up now. It's up on YouTube. You can watch it. Obviously, I can't even share clips on this because I'll get a copyright strike. And his podcast is pretty diligent about that, because I did try to upload a few Rogan podcasts in the past, and just even short clips, like booms, copyright. My golly. And other YouTubers as well are refraining from uploading any clips because they'll get copyrighted, right? But you know, I mean, again, you could just go here, type it in the search bar, Trump Rogan, and the podcast will come right up. And again, they're already starting to take snippets from the interview he did with Trump and upload them, so you'll be able to see those. And you know, this is, I mean, he's already starting to take the lead in these polls. But I to be honest, I don't even really look at the polls. I look at the betting odds, because that's where people are putting money on this thing. So if you want to see something more accurate than polls, you might want to look at the betting odds on this. A lot of people are looking at the poly market, right? You just go put in Trump or presidential polls, poly market. You Google that, it'll come up, and you can see that Trump is ahead right now, somewhere around like 63, 64%. Kamala's at like 36, 37%, something like that. But you know, who knows what's going to happen on election day, especially between the hours of 2 to 4 a.m. So it should be fascinating. It should be interesting. And again, I mean, I think this would help her if she actually took Rogan up on his offer to have her on, you know, his show, and just have, and he said in this interview, talking to Trump, he said, I would be polite to her, right? Rogan. He said, I would not try to treat this like an interrogation. I wouldn't do these gotchas on her. He goes, I would just want to have a conversation with her and get to know who she is, and this, because a lot of people out there still don't know who she is. She's a chameleon. You know, in my opinion, she just comes across incredibly fake and incredibly phony. I mean, say what you want about Trump, but you know, I mean, nobody's perfect, right? But he does, for the most part, answer questions directly, and the way he articulates what he's going to do. I mean, literally, they'll ask him like, so what are you gonna do when you become president? He's like, boom, on day one, first hour, this is what I'm gonna do. First day, this is what I'm gonna do. First week, this is what I'm gonna do. The first month, this is what I'm gonna do. The first year, this is what I'm gonna do. Right? Where you ask her that same question, you know, she answers it like, she talks in circles. She talks like a typical politician. I'm in California, so it seems to me like she went to the Gavin Newsom School of Politics, right? If you ever watch Gavin Newsom, oh my God, man, this guy is a master of not answering questions, but talking a whole lot, right? She's not as good as him. I'm surprised they didn't run Gavin, but she is trying to, you know, emulate his, you know, his mastery of not answering questions while, you know, acting like you're answering the question, right? But they've asked her, like, what are you going to do if you become president? Well, first of all, let me just say this. Thank you for the question, right? She's stalling as she's trying to think. Thank you for the question. I really appreciate it being here. As she stalls a few more seconds to think about it. First of all, I just want to say, I'm the only candidate here who's prosecuted transnational criminals. You know, stop. We've heard that. I also want to say I was raised by my mother, who I took care of while she was elderly. I grew up in a middle-class background. I'm from a middle class. I'm a middle-class kid. No, I mean, come on. You're really middle class. You grew up in a neighborhood where there were $1 million homes. I mean, really? Right? So, I mean, I grew up middle class. The homes were not even worth $50,000 back then. I mean, now, these houses in San Francisco are through the roof, right? But when I was growing up in San Francisco, no, my parents bought our home for $32,000, right? And they still own that home. Now it's worth like 1.2. But when she's like, oh yeah, I grew up a middle class kid. No, those homes are already worth millions of dollars. I'm like, you can't say that, you know? So anyway, guys, I really encourage you to watch the podcast, and, you know, whether you're supporting Trump or not, whether you're supporting Kamala or not, it's just good to listen to both candidates and really just take off the blinders, take off the biases, and just hear them out and really see who's answering questions and who's not, right? I mean, I really wish people just get over this whole left-right, Republican, Democrat thing and just look at good versus evil, or just who's the better candidate for the job. I mean, me personally, you guys know how I feel. I don't want any more establishment candidates in office, no matter what party they identify with. You know, I mean, 95% of, maybe 99% of the Democrat Party is establishment. I mean, the whole mainstream news is pretty much establishment, including Fox. I mean, they're to me, Fox News is like controlled opposition. And then when it comes to the Republicans, I would say about 75% of those people, those politicians are also establishment. They're part of the matrix too, right? Very few are anti-establishment, and the ones that are, they just run these smear campaigns on them relentlessly, and they want to take them down, you know, because a big thing is they want to stop the war, right? And I really believe Kamala is an absolute, not only is she a puppet, but she's an absolute establishment candidate who will do whatever she's told. And that's why they want to put her in there, because they're just going to use her as a puppet while they continue to fund these wars and, you know, and get involved in more wars. I believe if she becomes candidate, there's going to be more wars we get involved in. Obviously, they're going to raise our taxes to pay for these wars, and a lot of them are going to be lining their pockets, and a lot of the politicians are. And if you don't play ball, then you're done, right? Or they will try to assassinate you. You know, because it just seems to me that, you know, when you run as a politician, if you don't play ball and you don't keep these wars going, they will destroy you. You'll be kicked out of the club. And as it stands, love him or hate him, I mean, there were no new wars under Trump. And I really believe that Russia would never have invaded Ukraine under Trump. I could put money on that Putin was afraid of him, and he would not, you know, and he told him specifically, and they talked about that on the podcast tonight. Joe Rogan talked about that. It was the fact that he asked Trump, like, how would you stop that war? And he said, I had this discussion with Putin. I can't tell you exactly what I said, you know, but I will tell you that I told him, don't do it. Don't do it. You know, I guess there was a threat behind that. Like, if you invade Ukraine under my watch, you're going to be sorry, you know. But under Biden, he just doesn't fear him. Under Kamala, they definitely won't fear her. I mean, look at her on these interviews now that she does on these, you know, even when she went on Fox, which is supposed to be the enemy, right? Even though I think they're just controlled opposition. She went on Fox with Bret Baier, who's probably the most fairest journalist that they have over there. She apparently promised them 25 minutes of an interview with Fox News, and she showed up like 15 or 16 minutes late. They only got like 20 minutes out of her. And even after, you know, after those 20 minutes, her staff, there were like 4 of her staff members behind the camera, like frantically waving their arms for them to cut the interview. And it's like, lady, I mean, Brett would have gone for an hour, 2 hours if need be. And nope, they were like, cut it, because they didn't want her to say anything dumb, right? They didn't want anything to be used against her. And it's like, she's just hiding too much, right? It just seems to me like she's, again, I've said this before, I feel like she's cosplaying a presidential candidate. She's cosplaying a presidential candidate. She's the like stereotypical, like fake it until you make it type of person out there, right? It's just like, I feel like she's trying to phony and fake her way through this campaign just to get elected. Like, she'll say anything, promise anything, do anything, pander to anybody just to get elected so that her party can stay in power and they can continue to fund wars, raise your taxes, and clamp down on your freedoms, right? And you know, and the big reason I don't like her, besides all that, is just because what she said about free speech. I mean, her, you know, there are clips of this out there saying that her and Tim Walz, I think it was him specifically, saying that you know, oh, we need to you know, clamp down on this misinformation and hate speech, and we need to make sure these people are criminally charged. And it's like, okay, who decides what hate speech is? Because right now, the way it stands, to your side, hate speech is anything that you anybody that disagrees with you is hate speech or spreading misinformation. Anybody who challenges your narrative is spreading misinformation, you know. And this, you know, I mean, this is aside from all the loony things that they've been doing lately. I mean, the left is definitely not the party of the working man anymore, right? Because my parents were both like lifelong Democrats up until maybe a decade or so ago, and they jumped ship, just like many other lifelong Democrats. And now, I mean, the tide is turning. I mean, just you could fact check this. It's statistically true that a lot of people who are formerly Democrats are now moving to becoming Republicans, you know, which is insane, because you've got the Democrats, you know, spreading the message. I mean, their priority is not to help the working class. Their priority is to get tampons in boys' bathrooms, to spread the message that men can get pregnant, to put dudes in women's sports, to the party of women, right? Yeah, I mean, there's so much hypocrisy there. They're trying to erase women, and yet you have all these dingy broads voting for them. And I'm like, you realize they're trying to erase you, right? They can't even define what a woman is. And sorry, I cannot support a candidate who cannot define what a woman is. I also cannot support a candidate who also wants to put tampons in boys' bathrooms. And I can't support a candidate who is on board with transing kids. You know, I mean, it's too loony, man. It's too loony. And I really just, at the end of it, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like they're just trying to just make people crazy, right? Just demoralize people, and to make the absurd look normal and the normal to look absurd, right? They're just turning everything upside down. And goes back to that basic lesson in the Bible: who's the author of confusion? Devil. And so right now they're pretty much doing his dirty work, in my opinion, right? However, if you don't believe in reality, objective reality, and you want to believe in this subjective reality that guys can have babies and you know, dudes can compete in women's sports, I don't know what to tell you. However, watch the podcast, guys. I think it was pretty fascinating. Again, no matter what candidate you're supporting, it was a fascinating conversation, and I feel like it was pretty fair. And you know, they talked about everything, which was really refreshing. I mean, they went beyond politics. They also talked about the UFC, and you know, they talked about iPhones towards the end of it. Like, I think Joe was talking about why they should start building iPhones in America. And so it was a pretty fascinating podcast. It went 3 hours. And the insane thing about this is, after that podcast, Trump went to a rally to go talk to a rally of, you know, tens of thousands of people. I mean, I don't know where the guy gets his energy, but it's pretty inspiring. So in any case, guys, let me know your thoughts below. If you've watched the podcast yet, or if you plan on watching it, drop your comments below. Drop your comments about the candidate you're supporting and why. Let's try to keep it respectful. I know it's very, very divisive, you know, talk about religion or politics, but You know, I try to be as fair-minded as possible. And so, yeah, drop your comments below. It's like 2 in the morning. I can't wait to go to sleep, but I did want to shoot this for you guys and let you know, because this was a big story all week, and nobody ever thought it was going to happen, and it happened. Yeah, and go Dodgers. All right, guys, later.
Oh,